was The Nightingale by Christine Hanna. I hadn't read that, so I looked it up, and I found out that it was a New York Times bestseller. It was also the Wall Street Journal's best book of the year when it came out in 2015, so I am definitely going to check that out. And I thank Brittany for the recommendations. Welcome to Rotary, Brittany. Next up, Graham Gillette for our moment of inspiration. Thanks.
You know, Matt, you do move slowly, but you do seem to always be ahead of the rest of us, so I don't know, maybe multiple those things off. Some of the things I'm going to say today, I think I've said from this podium before, but sometimes things bear repeating. I met Kelly Markey at Dorothy's House, founder and Unstoppable Engine, when she came to speak to our Rotary Club some years ago. We learned from her that day how Dorothy's House offers access to a well of hope, and more than that, provides those who drink from it the tools required for paving a path to a brighter future. That afternoon, Kelly and I hatched a plan to start a writer's workshop at Dorothy's House. During workshop, we explore writing, but more than that, we find common ground. When we get things right, we lift each other to view things hidden from us when we walk alone. If it sounds like I'm overwriting here, I can assure you I'm not. My Dorothy's House friends and I have shared incredible things. From a simple prompt, one Dorothy's House participant crafted one of the most powerful pieces of writing I have ever read. She spoke about finding grace. With a slight apology, I stand on her theme as I try to reach for today's words of inspiration. For some, finding grace is a spiritual act. There, for the grace of God, go I. Yet for others, grace is found when a person endeavors to bend the arc of human nature toward love, kindness, and fairness, even when doing so may not seem to be in their personal interest. In these turbulent, divisive times when people seem more interested in choosing sides, being right, and building bunkers for a few, than they are in joining hands, seeking answers, and setting a course toward a better tomorrow for all, we must find the strength to rise above things selfish. Finding grace means doing better for each other and for the planet. In the end, finding grace is an individual act. How we define this may differ, but it is the quest for grace that makes us human, and it is the pursuit of grace that carries our race forward. When we turn inward, erect walls, and strip others of their individuality and dignity, we retreat from grace. Be the one to stand outside the wall, the one to raise the welcoming and affirming voice for those who have experienced things you will never understand. Keep your eyes and heart open. Grace is found in the most unexpected places. The well of hope resides within you. And with that, what do we do first? The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. Take a moment to greet each other.
Good to you, Martin. To you?
So you're connected to me.
Yeah. Not connected to Wi-Fi, and then I asked if we wanted to be connected to Wi-Fi. I said yes, and then I went to go try it again after that. It's connected. Always good to see you, Mason. Good to see you.
Now, waiting patiently for
Doing the fundraiser for that.
I was waiting for your call.
Dorothy's House is a source of inspiration.
Yeah.
I was worried that I wasn't going to be focused for a while.
I know. It was not
That's the idea. Somebody else.
Okay. Ring the bell.
That means you're going to be, that means you're now
Hello, as mentioned, I'm Brittany Freund, and I'm excited to get to introduce Kelly Markey, our speaker today. Kelly was a proven leader in marketing and business development during the first 15 years of her career. She built her expertise in direct marketing and advertising agencies in Chicago and San Francisco before taking a position at eBay to lead installed-based communication strategies and eventually managed the assets and equity investments in Asia, Latin America, and Canada for eBay International. After 5 years at eBay, it was time for a change. Kelly spent her time building a hobby web business, improving her golf handicap, and traveling. During this time, she completed her captain's licensure for sailing vessels, spending 1 week blue water sailing from San Diego to Baja, Mexico. If that's not impressive enough, in March of 2012, Kelly left for France to walk the Camino de Santiago, a 625-mile journey across the northern coast of Spain. She left her boots on the shore of Finisterre and decided to make Des Moines her full-time home. Having become disconnected from the place she grew up in, she decided volunteerism would be a good way to reconnect with the community, make friends, and perhaps even find a new career path. She became a volunteer with teen girls at Yes and was shocked to learn of the nature and severity of abuse the children in our community are enduring. This experience led her to become a foster parent. At the time, she was flipping homes for a living and literally tripped over the home that would become Dorothy's house. She purchased the home in 2014 and eventually purchased the home adjacent as well as an empty lot between the two that had become the neighborhood dump. She began working on the homes and properties immediately, and she began sharing her vision and found a groundswell of support in the community. The homes were completed and opened in January of 2016. They are a safe place for the practice of life for those whose lives have been interrupted by sex trafficking and exploitation. Personally, I am inspired by Kelly's ambition, will, and patience, and I am lucky to be able to call her my friend. Welcome, Kelly.
2022 was a very busy year in victim services for human trafficking. We had, in our 7th full year of operations, the most referrals to our organization, the highest number of intakes, the most people that we referred to other programs, and yet still more than half of them were not eligible to come to Dorothy's house because their situation was crisis. And a group of women, more than 40, who said, I need you to tell me if you can give me a place to sleep tonight. For the danger that they faced and the circumstances that were in front of them. And our answer to that question from day one has been no. In 2019, this group made a substantial gift to Dorothy's house that catapulted us into the operations that we operate under today, that allow us to operate a 3-phased approach for women who are survivors of human trafficking, exploitation, and prostitution in Iowa. That phased approach creates an achievement orientation. It helps build stability, it helps build the practice of life, which is truly our mission for these women, where they get to gain increased independence over time and really rebuild their confidence and rebuild their belief systems in a community where their self-worth is based on what they have to offer because of their body. I was so impressed by Carl's mission for Rotary to end human trafficking in the world. I do not aim that high. It is my goal, hopefully, to make Iowa the most difficult state in the nation to conduct this business. And if we can do that, we can go help other states learn how to do that as well. Part of the problem, of course, is how do you end demand in a population of people who are willing to rape people for money? who have very few consequences for doing that. Luckily, on the perpetration side, the side that you might refer to as pimps, the level of incarceration and the duration of incarceration for people who are caught doing that business is greater and greater all the time. Our laws are good. Education among our legal system and our judges and the prosecutors and defenders who try these cases has a long way to go, and we need to figure out crisis intervention. We need to not criminalize victims of this crime. And because of the advances we have been able to make in the last 2 or 3 years, the money that we received from this organization allowed us to rebuild what Brittany referred to as the adjacent property. So the second home that I purchased, which was a 900 square foot, 135-year-old dump. And it operated as an administrative building for us. We invited women with children into our home there. So it served a lot of purposes up until a point where it started falling down, and it made no more sense to invest in it. So we received $40,000, which literally built the foundation of that home going into COVID. And we were able to successfully build that home with in-kind support and a small amount of fundraising, and today have no debt on that home. We finished the building and finished paying for it at the same time, which is really important for a not-for-profit. We are now endeavoring to complete a small apartment building. We place women in apartments in the third phase of our program, and finding housing that is both quality and affordable currently doesn't really exist in our community. And we had an opportunity in a very timely way to acquire a building that needed a lot of TLC that we will finish this spring, and it will become phase 3 for our participants. It also happens to be 4 blocks from our current operations, which makes it very convenient for us to continue to care for these women and to work with them on their journey. So we will also finish this building with no construction debt. We currently will have a small mortgage on it, but we're chipping away at that right now. But the crisis situation in anywhere in the United States today is almost non-existent. And the opportunity for individuals who are recovered from human trafficking around Iowa, around the United States, is to either stay in a trap house where the police will leave them behind, which is a very dangerous environment with many other perpetrators very close to the people who are being arrested, or to go to jail. And if you criminalize a victim of human trafficking, you are furthering their victimization and their recovery path exponentially. To tell them that they are at fault or to blame for the victimization that they've endured, that no one in this room can put their head around. Graham knows a few of our gals and has had some insights into, and Brittany of course has to listen to me from time to time talk about some of the I don't want to say challenges, but some of the personalities that we work with, and truly the sickest people in our community who are the most vulnerable. And you add criminalization on top of that, which is part of the victimization, right? They're forced to steal, they're forced to do drugs, sell drugs, in order to catch a crime, and so that they can then be further manipulated by their perpetrators. And so then you try to help them get jobs and apartments and things like that, and they have a criminal record, up to and including felonious crimes. So we start to unpeel the layers of vulnerability that these individuals have faced, which starts in childhood. The adversity and that these individuals have faced in childhood creates the vulnerability that leads someone to believe that what they have to offer in this community is based on the holes in their body. It is multiple, complex, co-occurring mental health conditions. It is homelessness, it is poverty, it is addiction. It is all of the things that our community in silos does a really good job of providing services for the most part. We have some work to do in mental health, we have some work to do in homelessness, we have work to do in all of these areas. But if you isolate these conditions, you are not dealing with a person. And if you put one of these people in a housing environment without the resources that they need to heal and to recover, they will likely fail. And so 2 years, people say to me, Kelly, 2 years, that seems like a long time and that seems really expensive. So our average age is somewhere between 22 and 30 years old. We've had women as young as 16 and as old as 48. And it doesn't matter. Every single one of them presents with a different history. Every single one of them has an experience at work, is a sister, a mother, a daughter, is somehow connected to this community, and has been let down by it. And so whatever Brittany had to say about me might sound interesting or inspiring, and I'll tell you, every single person in this community can find one way to help a person. And the privilege that comes with being able to be in a community like Des Moines that is so generous and has Rotarians tagging along and taking the lead on a crime like this in our community, that 10 years ago, people did not believe me that it was happening here, or it was not happening to our girls and boys. Is just profound, and the privilege to be able to help in that way, in that capacity, it's just such a gift to me. And for sure, the hardest work I've ever done, and not always the most rewarding, but for sure, the most intentional and the one that keeps you coming back every day. People ask me what our success rate is, and again, we work with a pretty sick population of individuals, and our success rate is 100%. Every woman, not even that enters our home, but that comes through our intake process, is treated with respect, is not blamed or shamed for what has happened to her, and is given an opportunity to change direction in her life. If she makes it inside of our doors, she knows she's loved authentically. She knows she's safe. She builds on that foundation of safety to re-access education and growth and opportunity and independence. For the first time in most of their lives, they will achieve an apartment of their own that nobody else pays for, and that they don't owe anything for it. In Iowa, this crime is a crime of relationship. Everybody who is victimized by this crime somehow knows or is connected to the person that is perpetrating them. And it is unique to Iowa. It's not the only way that it happens here, but it is the predominant way. And when your mom or your grandma is your trafficker, it changes that dynamic. There's no good outcome for sure, but when it's your family member and certainly your mother, the unwinding of a belief system about relationships is a long, long journey. 2 years is the start, not the end. These women will continue to heal for the rest of their lives, and they will do aftercare and rely on us for the rest of their lives. We will be part of their network. But going into this summer, Dorothy's House will begin a test for crisis intervention. We are working with the Department of Safety. Finally, they're ready for us, and the Department of Criminal Investigation, and we will be the NGO partner for ICAC, so Crimes Against Children in Iowa, to build crisis intervention. In 6 months, we will have enough knowledge to know what the demand for crisis intervention is and what the needs are. Around the United States, 2 nights, 48 hours is about the maximum amount of time a person is given to have a meal, have a shower, have a night of sleep, and make a plan. And we're going to offer 2 nights as our minimum, with up to 5 nights in order to try and help these people, put them on a trajectory. Some of those people might become a referral stream for Dorothy's House. Many will need a bus ticket. And so taking a couple of months to sort out what the needs are, what services and resources we can pull together, but giving them a safe place to start is job number 1. And so that is where we are headed. The work is massive. It is dangerous, it's enlightening, it's beautiful, and we just would not be where we are today without the investment that Rotary made in us in 2019 and continues to show up for in so many ways for us. So thank you so much. Am I taking questions? Okay. Yes.
Kelly, thank you. First of all, this might be appropriate, but let's fill out the pink sheets. My question is, I see on video sometimes where somebody can give a sign in a restaurant that they're being trafficked or need help. What should we look for?
The absence of normal. So he's asking me, what should we look for if we're in a restaurant or some setting and we think somebody is not safe? And the first part of that answer is don't wonder. Because if you wonder, what you'll never forget is what might still be happening to that person. And that is a really bad outcome. What I would say is don't engage, because it's a safety issue for everybody, including the person that you're potentially helping. Always call the police. There is an 800 number crisis line through Polaris. It's been a long time since I've said this number, but 888-3737-888. So it's not, I didn't tell you that like a phone number, but that's how I can remember it. And if you call that number first, I would call local police first. I would tell them not what you think you see, but what you actually see. And they want you to make that phone call, whether it's real or not. But we are blessed with a sixth sense that gives us a sense of discomfort about what might be happening, and then let the police take care of it. And the great thing about calling the police or calling Polaris is we start to quantify this problem. We're working with all of the agencies in Iowa today to start reporting our referrals consistently so that we can start counting this crime and creating some kind of quantification of how big this really is, because the belief is that 1% of it gets reported. So if we don't start speaking up, if we're afraid to reach out and help, the crime continues.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
I've heard you speak a few times, and I remember someone asking you what countries do the girls come from that you were working with, and you said something like countries, Valley High School, North High School. Can you tell us a little bit more, maybe to dispel some of the myths that we see maybe in popular culture about trafficking, like the girls and young women that you serve?
Yeah, so dispelling the myth about these aren't our girls, where do they come from? So most of our referrals come via behavioral health hospitals, law enforcement, parole officers, prisons, and homeless shelters that we have worked with over the years to help them identify the signs of this crime. And these girls are from Iowa, which is not to say that we won't help people who are not from here, because oftentimes we refer survivors to other programs out of our state because it's safer for them to heal there. But we will never be out of business just helping our own, which is a really good place to start. Every high school in the metro has been represented in our intake process. Every behavioral health hospital in our state has been represented. We work really closely with SANS unit and with Mary Greeley and with Mercy Behavioral Health, so that they understand what they see when they start to unwind the stories of a group of people who, you know, for the most part, their conditions are diagnosed in crisis, in emergency rooms, and it is the worst possible time to put somebody on a long-term mental health medication when they're in crisis. So we're working very hard, like I said, to make Iowa the hardest place to do this business and potentially the best place to heal from it. Thanks for asking.
Thank you for your excellent presentation, Kelly. I have a question as to whether you encounter victims who are stalked by their trafficker or are where there are attempts to recapture them either while they are in the home or shortly after they left.
Yeah, so he asked me about whether or not victims are stalked by their perpetrators and try to seek them out and get them back. So it falls under the umbrella of shady shenanigans that go on in this industry. Because it is a crime of relationships, oftentimes we do have, especially family members, once a girl is in recovery, to retrieve them. And because of the relationships and the false relationships and the manipulation that occurs, most of these victims feel love, care, admiration, responsibility toward their perpetrators, which is part of the unwinding of belief systems. And so there's, those risks for sure. And we have, various requirements in place about what they can and can't do and who they can and can't contact during our recovery process. No social media, they can't turn their own personal phones on because people will find them with their phones. And much of this we learned the hard way, and much of it we just thought really hard about in order to prevent that from happening. And we've never had a girl leave to go back to her perpetrator. We have had women who re-engage with their families before they're ready to have safe boundaries in those relationships. Because everybody wants to love their mom. And even if your mom was your perpetrator, and we work with girls to help them reconnect those relationships, but in ways where they can't be vulnerable to them anymore.
Kelly, tell them about your holiday.
Holiday hullabaloo. I have to show you the cutest video I made of like 30 little kids trying to say it out loud. So we have never done a gala. We, even though this is lovely, avoid rubbery chicken dinners and me standing up and making a bunch of people cry and then asking you to get your check. Has anybody ever been to one of those before? We have a few of those in our community, and it's not our style. And we're also a very narrow mission. We operate on about $375,000 a year. We'll serve about 15 to 20 women a year because of the duration of our program. So it's very, very small. But last year, a very good friend of mine, Tracy Fuller from Innovative Events, approached me about a concept called the Holiday Hullabaloo. And it is a colossal Christmas convention. And what I love about the Holiday Hullabaloo is it is a way for us to create something that says thank you to the community, the widespread net of support that we get from this community to allow us to do this work. And so we launched it last year. The product is unbelievable. You cannot walk in and not smile and sing a Christmas tune. It's great for families. It's very active compared to a lot of the holiday activities around. It is not passive. You will go in and be busy for 2.5 hours with your families. And so if you know companies who are interested in sponsorship with some of our activities and events, so for example, Delta Dental took a sponsorship position of Candyland and gave away free toothbrushes last year, right? So there are a lot of ways that we can incorporate a lot of businesses into the things that we do. But for sure, come out and enjoy it because it is delightful. It'll be at the Woodsmith shop from Black Friday weekend, so the weekend after Thanksgiving through New Year's Eve, on the weekends, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Greg. We couldn't have done it last year without your help, obviously.
Earlier, I think we heard the name Casey's listed as by one of our speakers today as being a leader in this area and some of their programs. If that is right, or whoever that is, what are their people trained to look for in the population they may have coming through their facilities that some of the rest of us might benefit from knowing?
So he's asking me about Casey's and their role in helping identify victims in our community and what they're doing and how they're being trained to help. Casey's is a leader for sure in the work. Do you remember Blue Star Homes? Right, I'm a Des Moines girl and I remember we were a Blue Star home. Casey's is a Blue Star home for people in our community who are at risk. And what I would say is look for things that are out of the normal. And you won't have to look very hard if you believe this crime is happening in our community. It will be somebody without a cell phone, perhaps shoes, perhaps with injuries that may not be typical to just somebody walking in, but somebody who is under the control of someone else, not allowed to sort of roam freely about the store. One of the busiest places in Des Moines for perpetrators to identify potential and prospective new victims is the Quick Trip at 15th and High, down the street from CIS, Central Iowa Shelter and Services, because that's where they go for their morning coffee. And they're looking for relationships, they're looking for boyfriends, they're looking for cigarettes, they're looking for love, and they're looking for it at Quick Trip. They're looking for it from anybody who is willing to offer it to them. And perpetrators are quick to recognize. In Iowa, the average amount of time for a youth, for someone under the age of 18 to be approached by a perpetrator of this crime if they are homeless is 36 hours. The national average is 72 hours, but in Iowa, it is 36 hours. If a child is couch surfing, is, for some reason not living with their family or foster family or whatever it is, and it's a lot of kids in our community. Within 36 hours, someone will recognize that vulnerability, and it goes from couch surfing, right, I'll give you a place to stay, to you owe me something. It's always a transaction, and that transaction and the grooming will happen within 12 to 24 hours.
Do the perpetrators know each other, or do they act independently?
So perpetrator rings, he's asking me, do perpetrators know each other? It's a pretty seedy group of people. Des Moines, the metro is a pretty small place. Drugs is at the center of all of it. And perpetrators have networks, right? So there are a lot of people involved potentially in imposing this crime on 5 to 10 people at a time. So there's a groomer, there's a recruiter, there's oftentimes what they call the bottom, who sort of, she at one time was performing sex acts for money and has elevated her stature inside of his organization. And she takes a role of sort of caregiving and like coaching and things like that. So there are a lot of people involved in a network. I don't know if on a larger scale, like my guess would be no, because they're competitors. But I don't really know the answer to that question. What I will tell you is, and this goes back to actually, Carl, what you were saying about not criminalizing the victims. We are working right now with Piper Lewis's parole officers. This girl should not go to jail, ever. She should not have ever been put in juvie. And we don't have those resources. And so if we can offer Piper Lewis a chance, we are on the bleeding edge of victim services for this crime. We're talking to another young gal. She's got to be like 22 or 23 now, and I met her when she was just graduating from Roosevelt High School and had decided that she was joining into the sex industry by choice. And she was working with a guy in Chicago who was her escort manager, happened to go by the name King. And so her mom sort of coerced her into meeting with me, and I talked to her about some of the realities of the sex trade and how the sex trade really isn't a choice for people. It's a lure because of the money, but also it's a false front. And she was 17. She knew way more than I knew about everything. And she went into this industry, and she became King's bottom and caught cases, and was put in prison for endangerment, child endangerment, and a lot of things as a victim of this crime. She's on parole now, and we're talking to her about potentially providing resource to her as well, because there is nowhere to start except for safety. And like I said, the trajectory for someone who gets into this crime is straight downhill into so much hurt and so much abuse and violence. And we are the only agency in the United States that will take a victim who does not have 30 days of sobriety, because it's not real. And sobriety is the most fundamental place to start. And for most of them, they can't wait to be sober. Drugs were imposed on them to control them, and sobriety is a gift to them. So we'll find inpatient treatment. All of them will do outpatient treatment as job number one in building safety for them and health for them. And it's true for everybody in this crime. So I forgot what the question was. Thank you guys again for having
So Kelly just told me that she is willing to stay a little later if you weren't able to ask your question. We do need to move on. Kelly, every time I hear you, or my relationship with Kelly goes back a long ways, and every time I hear you speak, I move through these emotions, and I don't know if anybody else has anxiety attacks like I do when I hear you speak. The role that Dorothy's House plays and the leadership that you provide in this community, I'm just grateful, and I know this club is too. We're happy to support you. So thank you for being here and continuing to share your message with all of us. We live privileged lives, and we need to be grateful for that. And hopefully, I'm going to reiterate what Bob said. Let's do a good job with this. Okay. As a token of our appreciation for the presentation that you provided us today, we're going to donate a book to the Des Moines Public Library. Your book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Band. The Des Moines Public Library was also a beneficiary, like Dorothy's House, of one of our grants, and has been reaching scores of readers across the Des Moines Metro since 2020. As you consider the following upcoming meetings, please think about who you would like to invite to get exposure to the Rotary Club of Des Moines. We've got a great slate of upcoming guest speakers. Matt Unger, our own Matt Unger, will be here to present on what's happening inside the Des Moines community related to food insecurity. Dan Houston, current CEO of Principal Financial Group, will be here on April 6th. And our own Governor Kim Reynolds will be here to present on April 13th. So strong lineup. Please reach out, bring people, make sure you RSVP both for yourself and for guests by 9 o'clock on Wednesdays. Greg Edwards. This is tough, Kelly. I do need to leave things on a bit of a lighter note.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Greg Edwards, you need to stand and be recognized for clogging traffic last week. Any opportunity to give Greg a hard time is welcome. But Greg, thank you for the work you do. That was a terrific showcase of the Des Moines Metro. And last week we talked about our brackets and our allegiances to different teams. So just a show of hands, who here filled out a bracket for the NC2A tournament? Okay, decent showing. Who here's bracket is still alive? Okay. All right, well, hopefully you get through the next 2 days and you're still standing. Really appreciate all your time today, and it is time for us to adjourn. We'll see you next week.